Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on the new accounting needs for small businesses. Thank you for joining us today. It's going to be a really fantastic webinar. We're very privileged to have Willem from Dough-Getters with us to share his insights and experiences on the changing needs for small businesses and what they've been doing at Dough-Getters to accommodate that. So very simple housekeeping before we begin, as always. Please minimize anything that is going to take bandwidth away so you don't miss any of the great content that's going to come out today. And you'll also notice there's a chat box on the screen in front of you. Please put questions into the chat box as we go through. We'll answer them in the live chat this morning. And anything that we can't answer via chat, we'll pick up after the webinar. So, as I said, today's webinar is about talking around the new accounting needs for small businesses. It comes at I think, an incredibly topical time as we have seen some changes again to the lockdown regulations in South Africa. And actually, just recently, on the 10th of July, McKinsey released a new report, which was a really nice aggregation of information about the challenges the SMEs in South Africa are facing right now, with an estimated 98% of businesses in South Africa being SMEs, accounting for around 60% of employment in South Africa and contributing 40% of the GDP. SMEs really are the lifeblood of South African business, and there's an estimated 60% of them that stand or run the risk of going out of business during this crisis if they can't get the right help and support that they need in order to operate and continue running. And that's where we think, fortunately, Willem shares our opinion. That's where we think accountants and bookkeepers and advisors play such a pivotal role in ensuring that they can succeed and stay alive as we go through quite tough times. So that kind of leads me on to the next slide, which is for me to introduce myself. Those of you who haven't seen me before, I'll be surprised, but I'm Alex. I'm the general manager of Receipt Bank in South Africa. You'll tell that I'm an Englishman. I moved here at the end of 2017 as we set up our office and set up our team in South Africa. And I've had the great fortune of working with accounting firms and partners like Willem's for the last 3 years and prior to moving to South Africa as well. And Willem, welcome. Thank you for joining us. I'll let you say a little bit about yourself. We've had you on stage with us here before, so I'm sure you're probably a familiar face to this audience as well.
Yeah, good morning, Alex, and thank you very much for inviting us back on to work with you on this. Thank you. For those of you who don't know me, Willem Haarhoff, I'm one of the co-founders of Dough-Getters Accounting. And we just love being part of these sessions and looking to see what we can do with technology to make everybody's lives a lot easier.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining, Willem. You've got some pieces of wisdom to share with the audience later on, which is incredibly generous, and we are as grateful as you are that you've joined us this morning. So thank you. A little bit just about Receipt Bank before we get going. Most people, I hope, on this call are either existing customers or will have seen us before, but we're very, very simply, we exist to help facilitate a lot of what Willem is going to talk about today. We exist to empower accountants and bookkeepers to serve and support their clients. And really, we have two key objectives in doing this. The first one is to help you collect important accounting and bookkeeping data as quickly and as efficiently as possible from your clients. And then the second really key objective for us is then to help you turn that into valuable and insightful data as quickly as possible by processing it as cost effectively as we can and as quickly as we can, so that you can get it into your accounting system and actually start to interpret and utilize that information much quicker. And we think, that even before COVID, even before we came into the kind of circumstances and challenging environment that we're in right now, there was a change in requirement for a lot of businesses, not just in South Africa, but globally. And there's some more fantastic reports that Psycho have released just recently around understanding the SME landscape. And the kind of outcome of that report was that there are 5 big challenges facing SMEs across South Africa. None of them are going to come as a surprise. I'm sure already most of you are working with your clients and customers to try and overcome them, but access to finance, access to business skills and knowledge, access to education, access to an understanding as to what the regulations and policies are of particular markets and industries. And as we go through changes in the regulations around lockdown, as we go through the understanding of what this new normal will look like, SMEs, your clients, your customers are going to need that support more than ever, because it's incredibly difficult for them to stay on top of the changing environment, and also focus on how they can run their business, how they can stay afloat, how they can survive in what is quite troubled and challenging waters. And I think those of you who joined us a month or two ago, we ran another seminar, another webinar with Dricky from Feldskern, and that was a really good example of how everything that they did in lockdown was trying to pivot and change their business direction in order to stay alive. But without the help and support of their accountants and advisors in Iridium and Peter and Simon, they would never have been able to do that, because they just didn't have the financial insights in order to give them the right support to make those decisions. And so we really firmly believe, Willem is a cracking example of this, that in the world we're in at the moment, where we talk so much about the requirement of medical professionals to keep us alive, accountants in the business world are really stepping into the shoes of doctors, looking at the symptoms of businesses. They're advising and giving insights in how to recover, how to survive, and how to stay fit and healthy. And I think that's a really, really important point. And so more than ever now, the focus is on innovation and on resilience, as we try and understand what the new normal looks like for a lot of our customers. But I think what we've learned, what we've all seen, and everybody on the front line of this will be closer than I am. I'm very fortunate that I speak to a lot of firms like Willem's every single day, and so I get a lot of feedback. But what we've seen is that business is still happening. Businesses are still surviving. A lot of businesses are actually perhaps even doing better than they did before. And so it is a difficult balance at the moment, with many that are struggling and are going out of business. And if we look at accountants and bookkeepers specifically, we're very fortunate that we've got an incredibly wide customer base, not just in South Africa, but across the globe. And through some of our forums like Orange Select, through some social media campaigns, and through some of our user researchers, we collected quite a lot of data around how our partners are surviving and faring through the last couple of months. And I think some of the stats that have come out have been quite exciting. 54% of our partners have said that they've had new client inquiries. In fact, I would take it a step further, and Willem might share some data on this as well, but I've spoken to a number of firms in South Africa that have actually come out of the COVID pandemic with higher revenues than they were forecasting anyway pre-pandemic. And that's a really good sign that the work that you're doing for your existing customers, and the work that you can offer to potential new customers, is exactly what they need. It's exactly what they're after, and it's valuable to the point of these businesses that are struggling and trying to stay alive are willing to exchange their cold hard cash. And we know more than ever right now that cash is king, in order for you to give them their support. And you can see there at the bottom that 36% of the people that we surveyed had brought on new clients. So it is a very exciting time, despite the fact that it obviously is very, very difficult for so many. And I think the kind of outcome for a lot of this survey, or the outcome from the survey, was that we went on to ask, what sort of services do these customers, do these clients actually need? What services do they value? What is it that has become more important now than ever before? And I think it's a given for us. We take it for granted, Willem. I know you do as well. But for so many, perhaps, that they don't view it like this, and it's something we're trying to change as a perception in the industry. Accountants and bookkeepers are so much more than just number crunchers. They're kind of expanding into not just advisors and interpreters, but actually partners in your clients and customers' businesses. People that have a vested interest in the success, and also in the kind of longevity of those businesses. I think it's important that we don't look at customers and they're just going to be here for a couple of weeks, months, maybe a year, but actually we want to be looking at potential clients as being ones that we're going to be servicing and building a relationship with for the next 5, 10, 15 or 20 years. And the work that we can do with them through this lockdown environment and through the hardship of the pandemic really builds that relationship, builds that foundation for us to take forwards. And I mentioned the kind of Feldskern and Dricky story, but so many of our clients right now are trying to stay afloat, trying to stay alive. They're trying to focus on the day-to-day running of their business. How do they pivot? How do they change? If they were a restaurant, how do they make sure they get enough cash flow to break even or to minimize their losses? If they were in an industry that is completely closed, how do they repurpose their workforce to generate some new revenue, or to find perhaps a new niche for them to operate within? And you can see on the screen in front of us, nothing here is surprising. That advisors, our partners, accountants and bookkeepers, are working in different ways now than ever before, in order to give this insight and information to customers and clients around, do they have enough cash flow to stay afloat, to stay alive? How much longer can they operate for? We've seen the government release a whole host of grants and support mechanisms. Which ones are appropriate for your business? Which ones do you think are going to be the most successful? And with some of the changes in regulations, what can you do? What can you do? How can you operate? What are you allowed to do? How much of your workforce should you bring back in order to remain profitable, if you can be profitable, to at least break even? And more than ever, the need for what we would describe as real-time data. I'm sure, Willem, you guys are pushing this very hard with your clients. The need for real-time data to make business critical decisions on a complete set of books is absolutely paramount to the success of businesses. We cannot go into July or August still doing the bookkeeping from the information in April and May, because the landscape is so vastly different that actually we're making advice, or we're advising based on incomplete data that could be completely out of sorts or out of sync right now. So more than ever, the need to have that picture right here, right now, is crucial. And the change for some firms, I think, is going to have been quite drastic. Going remote, moving online, taking the server out of your office is going to have been quite a big change. And so it's a double-edged sword, where we're changing our business model, but we're also having to adjust for the changing needs of our customers and our clients. And there was a wonderful webinar that we ran with Jason Bloomer at the start of the very, very start of the pandemic back in March. And if you'd like to get hold of that, then please do reach out, and we'd be very happy to share that, where he talked about becoming virtual, becoming remote, and the steps, the deliberate and purposeful steps necessary in order to do that. And one of the things that makes me incredibly happy is we've got Willem on the line today, who is one of the firms that had set up their business to be remote. They had been working with their staff members, but also their clients remotely for the last number of years. And that's meant that they understand how to service their clients, how to meet these needs, virtually, but how to really focus on the importance of the tools and technologies that allow them to do it more effectively than ever. And so we've actually got, as I said, at the beginning, we've got Willem on the line. He's going to share some of his stories, some of his client case studies, if you will, and kind of talk about how that's helped them to build a very, very successful firm in Go-Getters Accounting. They won the Xero 2020 award. I think it was it Emerging Partner of the Year or Best Partner of the Year, Willem? Emerging Partner of the Year. So Best Partner of the Year coming in 2021. We'll set the sights high. But you know, that is why we've got Willem here today, to talk about their story and their journey around how they've seen the change and how they've positioned themselves in order to kind of take advantage of that. So Willem, I'm going to ask you to give us a more formal introduction to Go-Getters now, to give us a bit of background and a bit of color on the story from where you guys started and to where you are today. And so I'll hand over to you. When you need me to change a slide, just shout, and I will, if I haven't already changed it, I'll change. I'll be your clicker for today. But thank you for coming. And yeah, over to you, Willem.
Thanks once again, Alex. It's a real privilege for me to be part of this, and I always love any opportunity for us to engage like this, and indeed I think to share knowledge, because I mean, our whole philosophy is about sharing, because none of us can exist on an island, and that's certainly the philosophy we see with all the partners that we deal with. But just as a background, so both my partner and I have more than 20 years experience, in big corporate firms, and we basically came together at the end of 2016 to put our minds together and say, look, we're really tired of corporate. Nothing against corporate. There's a place for corporate, but we both firmly believe that the future of South Africa's economy lies in small business. And that's why when we came together, we felt, what can we do that is unique, that is going to stand out, but that is really going to speak to the heart of what small business owners go through. And that journey led us to the creation of what is today known as Go-Getters, which we formally founded in 2017. We started with maybe not even 10 clients, and you know, today we more than 100 clients that we managed to gather. And the team also today consists of 17 team members. And as you mentioned, our business is completely digital. We don't rent any office, we don't work from an office building. Every single one of our team members are around the country, some of them in other parts of the world, and we all collaborate online. The same goes for our clients. We interact with our clients completely digital. We don't have physical filing cabinets in our respective houses that contains client stuff. Everything's digital. You know, do we go and have face-to-face meetings with clients? Of course we do. In fact, you know, we encourage that as much as possible. And for that, we would either go to their offices, or we meet somewhere central, like a coffee shop or a restaurant or wherever. Our business is where our clients are, and whether that's in the cloud or physical face-to-face. That's been an incredible journey, because I think one of the things that everybody would be grappling with at the moment is how do they you know, stay alive as a business. And one of the factors to that has to do with your profitability. And the cost of execution is driven by what input costs you are. And that's a function of your direct costs and your overheads. And so one of the ways we seek to maximize our profitability is to limit and as far as possible eliminate overheads. And so that's part of why we have gone the digital journey. Now, just at that point, if you'd allow me, I would like to just make a very, very important point at this time.
I'll let you do anything. I'll let you do anything. The floor is yours.
Thank you. We are incredibly grateful and in a sense feel somewhat indebted to all the stakeholders in our ecosystem. I think the most important probably would be our clients. We've all gone through a very, very difficult time the last few months, both physically, emotionally, and it's been tough. Nobody will misunderstand what I'm talking about now. And the fact that our clients continue to recognize the value that we bring to the table, and as a consequence, continue to be willing to part with cash to settle our bills. You know, it's nothing less than heroic. So, you know, big shout out to all of our clients. We really appreciate you all, if they are listening, because if we don't have clients, we don't have a business. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
And you know, we were very fortunate, I think, partly because of the way we set up, but also because of the value we bring to the table. You know, we did lose some clients, but we gained more clients. So we experienced net growth, and we're very fortunate. And the other thing that we're very fortunate about is the people that we have in our team. You know, they also continue to soldier on. It's been a very tough time, and nobody at once stopped and said, oh, no, it's this, there's excuses or this. Everybody just kept on, all hands on deck all the time, because I'm sure most accountants out there would have experienced a lot of pressure in terms of the amount of work that there was, even though you may not have been paid for it. So it's been a tough time. So my staff and team members, very happy with you. And then lastly, but not least, if it's not for our technology partners like Receipt Bank, we would also not have had the business we have today. So that has enabled us to do things efficiently, to do things smartly, to provide the real-time insights to our clients, which again contributed to the value that we were able to bring to the table. So I just felt I had to make this point very clearly. Thank you.
No, very kind. I think you know, the one thing that we picked up a lot on, and it's an important point, is that for clients and businesses to continue paying through this time is it's incredibly important for everybody to stay alive, but it's a direct recognition of the value that you present, because generally speaking, when people get money in, they're prioritizing who they pay first. And so if they're paying you as one of the first suppliers, it's a really good reflection on the work that you're doing and how integral you are to their business. And I think, you know, a lot of businesses recognize the work that the accounting profession has done wholesale in the last 4 or 5 months has kept many businesses alive who otherwise wouldn't have survived, for sure.
Yeah. Great. So I wonder if we can go to the next slide.
We can.
So I think one of the themes in this presentation is really about, you know, clients' needs and how do we meet those needs. And I think that then is the whole question for us about how do we demonstrate and add value. It's all about value add. Clients increasingly are questioning, well, why do I need to pay money to a service provider? What do they really do? And can we replace it, or can we eliminate it? So understanding what drives value for your clients is absolutely key. And I think it starts with communication. So for us, it's always been about recognizing that clients are all different. In as much as we want to scale our business and standardize the way we do things, we always have to recognize that our clients are different. And it's about recognizing those differences and then be able to communicate in such a way for them to perceive value, but then ultimately delivering on that value. So for me, that's really a very, very important factor underpinning everything that we do is understanding that. Go to the next slide. So I've got a couple of examples that I wanted to share with everybody. I think the first thing in terms of just what are the needs of businesses out there, I think it's to try and keep it simple and understand that everybody wants to drive more sales. They want to, as a consequence, earn more profits, and so that they can get a handle on their cash flow. I mean, just yesterday I had a discussion with a client who sells time. And I said to him, well, what do you sell? Do you sell time or do you deliver value? But you still need to understand what it costs you to deliver that value. And only if you're profitable will you be able to generate positive cash flows. And that's just it. But part of that equation is what is the most reliable and cost-conscious workflow and technology that you can use. And this is where I want to really focus on the value we get from Receipt Bank. Because getting data and controlling the flow of data into an ecosystem, a lot of it is around expenses and suppliers and all that. How can you do that in such a way that you spend the least amount of time, but still get access to your information in the most efficient manner? So when we go out to clients, and especially new clients, it's a no-brainer that when we talk to them about technology, Receipt Bank is synonymous with that technology apps that we're presenting. And that's also the way we present it, because we say to them that if you are serious about your digital migration strategy, you can't just do one aspect of your business. You've got to look at your entire business as an ecosystem and then say, right, what are all the moving parts? The debits and credits that are in the center where you're going to do your financial reporting and insights, that's the end that you want to have in mind. But you still want to regulate the flow of data coming into that ecosystem. And so it's not just a bank statement that might feed into an accounting solution, or a payroll system that helps you with an integration to repurpose all your payroll entries, or a stock system. It's the entire ecosystem. And so that act of capturing data from a source document to get into your accounting system, it's very, very important. You can automate that. And then we kind of say to them, well, if this is what the technology can do for you, why would you not want it? And we are yet to see a scenario where we told the client that story and they said, no, they don't want it. Because then either we didn't do a good job explaining it, or they simply just don't get it. And probably there will be such cases, but I think we haven't seen them yet. So the examples I want to use, the first one, and this is, I think, a story that I did tell before. It happened sometime last year, and we were introduced to a family that owns a farm, and they've got all sorts of operations ancillary to the farm operations, but they are probably the biggest paper generator that I've ever seen in my life. And long story short, we went through the whole pitch, and we told them about the Receipt Bank application and how that can help them. And the next moment, the mother who basically runs all the operations, she started tearing up. She started getting tears in her eyes. She looked away from me. She looked at her husband. And at that point in time, I really got nervous because I thought, oh dear, I'm in the middle of South Africa. I'm not close to my car. What's going to happen now? And she just said to her husband, she actually punched him on the shoulder, but in a loving way. And she said, see, I told you for the last 10 years, there must be a computer out there that can do this stuff. And ever since then, they've been loyal, Receipt Bank supporters, and they've just loving their journey so far. The other example is also coincidentally a farming family. They've got about a couple of farms in their portfolio, and we were introduced to them by one of our existing clients, and they're in the top northeastern corner of the country, and I'm sitting in the Southern Cape in George, and they approached us to help them implement and go on to their digital migration strategy. And again, we told them the whole story behind Receipt Bank. At first, they didn't believe it. We then implemented it, trained them on it, and they've not looked back since. And I think the beauty of that story is the fact that we have not yet met each other at all, apart from video calls like this one and phone calls. That's it. But we've spent more than at least 100 hours online doing training, engaging with one another, getting all their companies onto a digital platform with Receipt Bank, a very integral part of that, and they are loving the experience. And then the last one is a more recent one. Just last week, we had a meeting with a potential new client who we also now having the discussion about their digital migration. And when we spoke to them about Receipt Bank, the first question they asked us, but it's so expensive, And I said, well, what is expensive? Tell us about your definition of expensive. And as we started explaining what you need to compare with in terms of expenses, they ended up saying, oh, wow, I can actually see how Receipt Bank can become one of your staff members. And all of a sudden, the whole cost conversation, the value proposition is turned on its head, and it's a no-brainer. So I think the key for us is really to understand what do these clients require, how you're going to make their lives easier, and then translate the fee that you would pay for the technology into the cost savings and the opportunity cost that they can pay. And it becomes...
And I think something I would always add on to that, and it's an old adage that gets thrown around regularly, and it's that price is only an issue in the absence of value. So if somebody understands what they're getting in return for the money that they're paying, then in almost every situation, the money you're paying is worth what you're getting back. And I think what always for me, and the two examples you've given here around the two farmers, what I always enjoy is that we speak to so many accounting and bookkeeping firms who talk about having special clients that won't change, or you don't know my clients, or there's no ways that I'll be able to work with my client base in this type of manner. And actually, I think it's always incredibly refreshing when you speak to people who you perhaps think there's no ways they'll change. They're very old school. They're set in their ways. Absolutely, it's just not going to happen. But you have that conversation, and the first example you gave around the loving wife chiding her husband is a really great example that actually you look at many businesses who operate in a particular way, but until you can help them understand and illustrate to them their own pain or their own inefficiency, or the cost, perhaps more importantly, of that inefficiency, people don't know they've got an issue until somebody shows it to them. And then it's about, okay, look, here is your problem, here is my solution. And I think it's always really encouraging to hear and see that, because you've got a plethora of customers that I've heard about, Willem, over the last couple of years, who, when you make that change on day one, actually you're then building a long-standing relationship, because you've got off on the right foot and you've made a material impact incredibly quickly.
Yeah, and I think what's very important to realize and to recognize is that you still, to get there, you still have to go through a very significant change. It's a revolution. It's especially if you go from a complete paper-based platform to a digital platform. It's a big change, and the learning curve is steep. And so I think as an advisor, getting your clients onto those platforms, you got to be very, very clear and deliberate in how you manage expectations. You want to sell all the benefits that there are to doing it, but you don't want to oversell and create false expectations. And then, having done so up front, you want to also walk the journey. It's not just a case of, hey man, here's a cool app. If you implement the app, all your problems will be solved. Not at all. I think it's incredibly important to understand, having done a deep dive into your clients' processes and their preferences and how they run their business, to map that to what will that process look like from a digital perspective. And then you walk the journey with them. So nobody is saying that it's easy or that it's a quick fix or a golden bullet or whatever the case might be. It's a process, but that investment of time, getting it set up and walking the clients through that, is oh so worth it. And I think once it's done, and we're seeing it with all these examples, the feedback you're getting from the client is, oh wow, we love accounting.
Yeah.
I mean, look, think about it that way. In what generation have non-accountants become excited about accounting? I mean, come on. And that's right now. And that's why there's no better time to be an accountant than right now. With all the technology that's out there at the moment, it's literally like being Alice in Wonderland. Go down that rabbit hole, and the deeper you go, man, you're just going to be blown with what you can find. So, yeah, sorry, you got to stop me now.
We'll move on.
So I think, on the topic of that communication, for us, communication is all about influence. That's why we communicate. We want our clients or whoever we communicate with to respond in a certain manner. And so I think, your approach to that communication, the way you communicate, the content is very important. Nobody's perfect, and you're never going to get it right all the time. But I think understanding that principle, for us is very important. And especially now, the last 3 months, it couldn't be more true than that, because everybody was and still is impacted by the lockdown in one way or the other. So the ability to show an appropriate amount of empathy in your communication is extremely important, because that's part of how you translate value. You can imagine if your communication rubs your clients up the wrong way, they then most likely not going to be receptive to what you got to offer, because they're going to already paint you with a certain brush. So I think that influence and the ability to influence people, cannot be overestimated. We believe that email perhaps is not always the best way of communication for various reasons, and I won't necessarily want to go into the detail. But I think it's important that when you do use email is to really recognize and understand why you want to send a mail, and isn't there perhaps a more efficient way of doing it. For our business, most of our communications we do without using email. And that is both an efficiency measure that we try to introduce, but it's also an approach issue. How do we best get our clients to move? And with that then is what other technology is available to help you communicate effectively. The other thing that is interesting with why we want to do that is to try and also keep data all together. I think today, managing data is probably what should be one of the top priorities of any business. If you're digital, well, even if you're not digital, but I think more so if you're digital, because the generation of data, I think, is exponentially higher. So to keep data in the same place, to keep it structured, properly indexed, is a challenge, and you've got to really think through how you would manage those things. So understanding what technology types are out there that's fit for purpose for every single type of communication, I think is important. And so for us, we've got certain channels that we use for our communication, that we use for various things, and also depending on clients, because again, every client's different. Some clients love email. Other clients like face-to-face meetings. Other clients like technology more, and therefore they use stuff like Slack, or they're happy to engage with you online in Asana or whatever the case might be. So I think for us, again, it's not something that you can cookie cut. You have to first of all understand what is it you're trying to do, who you're dealing with, and then what's the best medium and or technology available for that.
And just out of interest, Willem, I think it's an incredibly key point. When you start off with a new client, or when you went through this transition perhaps with existing clients, did you have that conversation with them around how they would prefer to communicate, or did you stipulate these are the channels that we prefer? How did you go about understanding that?
Alex, I'm going to be honest with you. This is still a minefield for us that we're trying to navigate. Because there's so many things influencing this at the moment. There's new technology coming out all the time. We would love to chase that as much as possible. And if you're anything like me, I get excited about new technology and I want everybody to use it. And sometimes to my own peril. But I think, what the way we try to manage that is we've got a very structured onboarding process for new clients. And one of the first discussions we have is to understand and explore what ticks, what makes the client tick, what keeps them awake at night. and how do they prefer to communicate. And more often than not, we adjust to what the client wants, but we try and influence them and explaining the benefits of certain types of technology and how it can make their life easier. And more often than not, we are able to convince them to come onto our platform. So again, I think it's understanding how best to influence people and then get them to work with you.
Yeah, I like that. I like that understanding, because there's a concession, I suppose, is the word I'm looking for. You know, where you want to communicate and you've got to understand what the best matrix is. You might have a preferred platform, which is A, they might prefer B. And so it's about just striking that balance between the two. And I think one of the areas you touched on right at the very beginning of this slide is that we're going through a very uncertain time at the moment. And so one of the things that we've worked incredibly hard to do within our team and with our partners is just to communicate and say, hey, what's up? How are you getting on? Are you alive? What are you struggling with? Is there anything that we can help with? Invariably, the response to us has been, we're good, it's okay, you know, thanks for checking in. But actually, what it helps to remind people that you're there, helps to remind people they're not in this on their own. And I remember, you know, the conversation you and I had right at the very beginning of lockdown, when it was a bit of a like, we don't know what's going on, everything's upside down, we're going to figure it out. And you know, that also means that it just helps to break down barriers. It helps to make it easier to communicate when things are a bit tougher. And I always think that the worst thing that can happen is you haven't spoken to someone for a couple of months, you pick up the phone and their whole world is burning down, and it comes as a surprise to you. And I think that's the other side of that. Ease of communication just allows for that two-way flow of information, because it's got to come from you to them as well as them to you, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and so I think, you know, one of the changes, for example, we've adopted with our clients was to try and be more deliberate in checking in, exactly as you said. And the nice thing about that is we've actually, for many of our clients now, agreed that it's going to continue regardless of what's going to happen with COVID or not. It's a good idea to check in, whether it's monthly, every second month, once every 6 months, checking in. Just talking about the business, just talking about you as a person, because there's always a person and certain individuals behind every successful business. So it's good to understand that as well.
Yeah, and I think there are two important words for me in everything that I try and do, but in you know, our approach. Deliberate, I think, is such a great word, and it's so underused, because so much of what people do and businesses do is accidental, and it works out for the best, but it wasn't perhaps intentional. So I love the idea of things being deliberate. And the other one of our core values as a company is purposefulness, and I think that ties in very nicely with being deliberate, because it's around, there is a reason behind us doing this, there is an objective, there is a goal. And so I think that is also quite a reassuring adjustment or kind of purpose, because it means that we're not just aimlessly wandering and trying to figure things out as we go, but actually we are trying intentionally to check in, to say hello, to make sure we're supporting and guiding. And I think more than ever right now, as we look at the changing landscape, your customers, your clients appreciate and enjoy that and value it far more than perhaps ever before.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. We can get to, so I think just to sort of work towards the conclusion from our side, some takeaways we want to offer at this point in time is, first of all, and this is something we talk about very often, is the role of the accountant has definitely changed. In fact, more so now in the last 3 months than before. In fact, what has happened has pushed so many companies to move towards a digital migration. They may have thought about it before and sort of postponed, but having seen what has happened, it's clear to us. It's no longer just about debits and credits. In fact, anybody can do debits and credits. It's not difficult. It's simply a process of being able to be structured and, you know, organize things into little boxes. That's what debits and credits are all about. The true value and the true challenge I would like to put out there is to become an advisor. And what does an advisor do? They give advice. They add value. They look at the business and the numbers that are churned out from the debits and credits. They interpret those numbers. They give insights. So it's all about business intelligence. But as I've said before, it's not about just grabbing an app from the cloud and splashing it on the company's processes. You have to understand the processes. How does it flow? How can you optimize the process? And then you identify what is the best possible app out there. And then you automate. That for me is crucial. And that's also why you may have seen earlier in the presentation, we've got a sister brand to our business called Go Get a Simple. And it's also, again, I like the word deliberate as well. We were very deliberate in coming up with that term, because it's all about understanding how you can simplify life for businesses, because we recognize that part of you working towards greater profitability is reducing the cost of execution, but at the same time getting to your information quicker. And this is that's what this whole point is about. But you can certainly no longer just think about debits and credits. That's yesterday. You have to move towards a more a more encompassing solution. Then I think the second thing is to, as we said just now, is collaboration with your client. The collaboration can simply not just be about how beautiful my profit and loss account that I've done for you looks. Even if you add 2 or 3 graphs to it, it's not about that. It's about getting into the meat of the client, having a proper, deep relationship, and becoming true trusted business advisors. And one of the ways is to then identify those times you're going to meet together so that you can come up with continuous improvement projects. There's always going to be something, and it's to understand those. And then lastly, I love the idea of driving hands-free in the cloud. No speeding fines. If you do that, you can certainly do it. It's completely safe. And this is where, for us, Receipt Bank has no equal at the moment. There are a couple of things that you can do within your Receipt Bank account, if you have them, to enable you drive hands-free. And the examples I've listed there are self-explanatory. But the concept of driving hands-free is all about seeing Receipt Bank as one of your staff members or one of your bookkeepers in the team. Because all you need to do is to get your suppliers to send the documents directly to Mrs. Receipt Bank, and it will go straight through. And the first time you see it is when it's in your accounting platform as an accounts payable, ready to be paid. That's hands-free for us, and that's something we drive with all our clients very actively. So I always say, when we talk about all these topics and then all these changes, it may seem like a mountain. It may seem very difficult to do it. It is actually not. It's about making a decision. I want to do it. And I say, just start somewhere. And here's one of the places you can start.
And I'm I've got my favorite quote is an old English quote from Churchill, and he talks about to improve is to change, and to be perfect is to change often. And I think it is so incredibly pertinent even today. We look at the last couple of months, and there's no doubt in my mind that the coronavirus pandemic has been probably, if not one of the biggest digital disruptors of our generation, because people have been forced into operating in new and challenging ways. And I think it is about iterating. It's about making a small improvement today that means you are slightly better than yesterday, and tomorrow making another small improvement that means you are slightly better than today. And so, it's not about being perfect immediately. It's about being perfect over time, and probably never being perfect, but we're always working towards being more intelligent and being more thoughtful with how we operate. And I think one of the great things that you've mentioned a couple of times is around one of the drivers to increasing your own profitability is reducing your cost of servicing. And reducing cost of service is often about decreasing time to do jobs that you could actually then spend that time elsewhere, and that allows you to double up on the revenue. I spent a long time when we first opened our office here helping to educate accounting and bookkeeping firms around, if it used to take you 10 hours and it now takes you 6, well, that 4 hours you can now spend somewhere else. But actually, if the value of the work you're doing and that first job is still the same, you can still charge the equivalent of what you charged before, but now you can just double up and get 50% or nearly 50% more time into another job. And I think that is the mindset that we need to be working towards when you talk about hands-free. The less time you spend doing work that is perceived to be unvaluable or lower end value, the more time you can spend doing more valuable, higher fee earning work. And I think those are some really great takeaways as we kind of move through this and keep kind of working on the changes in the cloud. And one of the big things that Willem has kindly done and always does is allowed us to share his kind of contact information. So if anybody would like to reach out to him, then his LinkedIn profile is there. They've got a Twitter account, and you can go and have a look at their website. It was recently redone. It looks fantastic. We love it. And as Willem said, they've launched a side business, a consultation process with Go Get Is Simple. And the idea there is about being kind of tech specialists, and always looking at how to make things more efficient and more straightforward for accounting and bookkeeping firms, but also for their clients as well. So, Willem, I can't thank you enough always for the information and insight that you provide on these sessions. They're always top quality, and we're very fortunate that we play such a key part in your business, and you speak so kindly about us as well. So thank you for that. And for those of you that are listening that don't know or haven't experienced firsthand anything that Willem has said about how we operate and what Receipt Bank can do, you'll see on the screen in front of you right now. You can take out a free trial from our website. So if you're not an existing customer of Receipt Bank, please go to our website. It's www.receipt-bank.com. And you can take out a free trial from our website that will give you a taste of some of the flavors and some of the efficiencies that Willem has spoken about today. And as part of that trial, one of our team will be in touch with you. They'll be able to help you with some of our online training and really make sure that from day one, you get the feel of the kind of power that we can bring into your practice. Now, hopefully everybody's been asking questions. I've seen a few come through as we come in. Please do not hesitate to fire the questions in as we come towards the end of this presentation. We will answer all of them via the chat box. And if there's anything that needs or requires further conversation, then we'll follow up with a phone call to kind of answer those more detailed questions. But that kind of leads me to the end of today's presentation, the end of today's webinar. Thank you everybody for listening. Willem, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your insights. I know you've given your kind of 3 key takeaways just a second ago, but I guess if I might bother you one last time, if there's any, what would your kind of final piece of parting wisdom be to those people listening today?
As my partner always says, is that if you have to capture something once, it's once too many.
I like that. I think it's a good motto to live by. So Willem, again, thank you so much for joining. It's always a privilege to have you on. Everybody that's listening today, thank you so much for taking the time out of your morning to listen to the webinar and to come and hopefully improve or figure out how you might take the next step forwards. We'll be back almost certainly again in the future with some more great tips on how the landscape has changed and how we think we can help you to continue running your business more efficiently, hopefully more profitably, but certainly future-proofing it as we come into the new normal. Good luck to everyone out there. It's green shoots are starting to come out of the ground, which is really exciting. And we certainly are feeling very excited about what the second half of this year brings. So have a lovely day. Enjoy the rest of the week. Enjoy the weekend, and we'll see you all soon. Willem, again, thank you so much. And I look forward to doing more of this with you in the future as well.
Thank you to you too.